Alright, so I've been using the OnePlus 7 Pro for a little over a year now, and I wanted to share with you guys what that experience has been like and whether you should still consider it as a worthy buy in late 2020. So let's briefly talk about specs. The 7 Pro comes with Qualcomm Snapdragon 855, which is second only to the 865 seen in most Android flagships this year. The model I have has 256GB of UFS 3.0 storage, 8GB of RAM, dual SIM card slot with no microSD expansion, a gorgeous 90Hz 6.67-inch AMOLED display with a pixel density of 516, and a triple array of cameras, ultra-wide, wide, and telephoto lens setup. Now, last year I was lucky enough to be able to grab this at a price of approximately $580. Comparatively, nowadays, you are looking as low as $430, and that's a lot of phone for the money. In terms of this, let's start off with the screen. OnePlus was one of the first companies to introduce high refresh displays on smartphones with the 7 Pro, and yeah, they did a pretty good job. Now, don't get me wrong, the 7 Pro's display isn't necessarily as smooth as the 120Hz screens seen in today's flagships, but that step up from 60Hz to 90Hz feels like a substantial, large upgrade compared to the visual gains you get from 90Hz to 120Hz. Now, in terms of the 90Hz refresh rate as well, it's important to know that I've had very rarely experienced drop frames on the 7 Pro. This is important because more recently, with high refresh screens coming to more budget phones like the Poco X3, whilst they may look good on paper, reviewers have noticed drop frames with everyday browsing. And on the OnePlus, that's not a thing. So let's digress. The other thing about the screen that I should talk about is that it's not only fast, but it's massive. It's 6.67 inches. It's also really bright and usable in outdoor conditions. It's color accurate with a wide range of color profiles to suit your needs. And in my opinion, the best part of the screen, it has no hole punch, it has no notch, it's just complete screen. So in a nutshell, side by side with the Samsung S20 range, I think you would be happy with either in terms of display quality, but given the substantially lower price of the 7 Pro, I know which one I would pick. Okay, so alongside the rather large screen, OnePlus chose to implement some pretty aggressively curved edges. This makes the phone an ergonomic nightmare for one-handed use, especially because One UI still doesn't offer a one-handed mode. Additionally, the glass on the exterior, front and back, means it's extremely slippery on smooth surfaces. So I would not recommend the 7 Pro for those who are looking for that one-handed experience, and definitely would recommend chucking a case on, or at least a skin on the phone. I've been using the OnePlus Sandstone case, which has been pretty great. I mean, it keeps the phone relatively slim, and it has that OG Sandstone feel that was classic for the OnePlus One, and it provides adequate enough drop protection for my use cases. On the flip side, because I don't often use the phone with one hand, I find that accidental touches from the curved screen, it's not something I often experience, and personally, I actually don't mind that curved edge on the phone. All in all, the build quality of the phone has held up pretty well. Thus far, I've only had one obvious scuff on the frame and no cracks to the glass. This is despite multiple drops, but do note I had the OnePlus case on. Now, the other thing to note is that the 7 Pro is also relatively heavy, weighing in at 206 grams, and it doesn't have any official IP rating for water and dust resistance. This has never really been a big issue for myself, but just keep in mind that that's one of the downsides of the phone. The other ergonomic and quality control kind of things that I would want to mention is that, for one, the pop-up selfie camera. It's not been an issue for myself. It works smoothly as it did the day it came out of the box, and I only have to every now and then occasionally wipe it down. The vibration motor is fantastic. It's not cheap feeling at all like some of the other competitors in this price range. I love the fact that there's a notification alarm switch. It's a godsend, and it still makes me wonder why other manufacturers don't really implement this on their phones. The other thing to say is the OnePlus power button on the right and the volume rocker on the left. They're appropriately positioned, but every now and then when I go to unlock the phone, I do take a screenshot because of their placement. The inbuilt fingerprint scanner is actually pretty good, and compared to the ultrasound scanner on the Samsung's S series, it probably works a little faster. The only negative thing is that the 7 Pro requires you to actually wake up the screen either by double tapping or turning on the screen via the power button for you to use that scanner. Whereas the Samsung just allows you to press in that general vicinity and it will unlock straight away. Just a minor gripe. In terms of battery life, the 7 Pro has a 4000 milliamp battery, which it's okay. I mean, it's definitely no battery king, but it does get me through my usual work day. An average screen on time usually runs between 3 to 4 hours after a year of use. And my kind of use case for this phone is generally web browsing, social media, watching YouTube videos, etc. The only gripe I do have here is really the lack of wireless charging, but OnePlus does bundle a Warp charger in the box, which can fill up the battery in approximately, in 20 minutes you get half the battery life, which is really useful when you need to have a quick top up, and it partly makes up for that missing wireless charging, partly. Now, in regards to the stereo speakers, there's a bottom firing speaker paired with an amplified earpiece up top. It's not ideal, but honestly, they sound pretty decent, and for just casual video watching, when I can't be bothered to put on headphones, they do the job. There's no headphone jack, however, which is honestly a bit of a bummer, particularly when I have wanted to quickly plug it into a friend's system, or when the 1,000 or so Bluetooth headphones I own are all out of battery all at once. So let's talk about performance. The Snapdragon 855 has held up really well over the past year. For the first time in a while, I haven't actually been tempted to upgrade to the latest offerings, i.e. the Snapdragon 865. And I think it's the combination of this processor, the 8GB of RAM, and in particular, the One UI experience and optimization. Upload really quickly and actually stay stored in memory. I get all my notifications, which I can't say is something that I've experienced on previous Xiaomi and other Chinese-made phones, because oftentimes when I've used those phones, things like my WhatsApp message alerts don't pop up all the time. For the OnePlus, I don't experience any UI freeze-ups or crashes, and the gesture navigation that they've implemented is actually really good. It allows me to enjoy the full length of the screen without obstruction. And the other thing is that I do like the shortcuts that they've generally implemented here, such as double press of the power button to wake up the camera and pull down for notifications on the home screen. I could go on in terms of the list, but safe to say the performance and UI experience is a huge bonus for this phone, and I think you will be very much satisfied with the power and the optimization from both a casual Android user standpoint as well as a hardcore enthusiast. Okay, let's move on to the cameras. The 7 Pro comes with a triple camera array. It consists of an ultra wide, a wide, and a telephoto 3x optical zoom. I really like this type of setup because honestly, macro cameras and depth sensors, they're just not that useful. The quality of the photos that come out of the 7 Pro are quite adequate. With the main wide lens, you get mostly detailed and accurate shots, but you switch between the sensors and you realize that there will be a lot of color shifting, particularly with the wide lens, which is the softest of the three. The native camera app, it's snappy enough, and I generally find that the image quality is sufficient for most landscapes and foodie shots, but overall out of the box, it's about what you would expect for the price. However, a game changer that I've only just recently stumbled across is that you can actually install a modded Gcam APK on this phone. The app itself has some quirks like needing to close every time you want to swap lenses, and some modes like portrait mode doesn't work in all types of scenes, but generally shots using the Gcam app have overall produced pictures with better dynamic range, more natural skin tones, better edge detection in portrait mode, and a much brighter and detailed image in low light using Nightscape. I still think the shots don't compete with the image quality produced from today's flagships, but they're definitely a lot better, and competing against this price range, I don't think you will find another smartphone that could hold up to the OnePlus 7 Pro. So, is this phone still worth it in 2020? I would have to say absolutely yes. Okay, it might be a bit bulky and it does lack a couple of those flagship features like wireless charging and a faster 120Hz screen. But you have to realize this phone is over a year old, and considering we have seen the price of the 7 Pro drop to below 500 USD, you'd be hard to come by anything that competes it with in terms of reliability, screen quality, camera setup, and user experience. Anyway, I'd be keen to hear what your thoughts are on the 7 Pro. Would you consider it at its current price, or is there a different phone that competes against it? Leave a comment below, subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.